Have you ever been with a woman, shared a home, a history, even years of loyalty, and yet one day she just drifts? No fight, no final word, no dramatic exit. Just that slow, cold slipping away, where her body is there, but her soul has already packed, and you're left asking, what did I miss? I didn't cheat, I didn't yell, I provided, so why wasn't that enough? If you're a man over 50, I'm willing to bet these questions haunt you more than you'd admit, and here's the bitter truth. You didn't lose her because of what you did wrong. You lost her because of what you never noticed. According to Dr. John Gottman, women's nervous systems don't respond to logic. They respond to emotional attunement. They don't stay because you're useful. They stay because they feel safe in your presence, not in your plans, not in your performance, but in your stillness. Let me take you back to a Tuesday morning at a cafe in Santa Fe. It was quiet. I was nursing a black coffee and a restless mind, thinking about past relationships, regrets I still wore like old coats. That's when he walked in. Not tall, not handsome in a Hollywood way. But the moment he entered, the air shifted. He didn't command attention. He absorbed it. Women noticed. Even the barista straightened up slightly, but it wasn't desire I saw on their faces. It was something gentler, a kind of surrender. It hit me like a silent truth I'd ignored all my life. Stillness has its own gravity, and some men have stopped needing to do in order to be felt. This man, he didn't need to project charm. He simply held himself, and because he did, the entire room relaxed, and I couldn't help but ask, what is that? And why have I never carried it? I used to think attraction was built on confidence, words, smarts, a firm handshake, and in my younger years, maybe it was. But after 50, after divorce, grief, children grown, and more silence than celebration, I've learned something else. Presence doesn't come from being impressive. It comes from being integrated. Carl Jung would call this individuation, when a man stops outsourcing his identity and begins to inhabit himself, not to control, not to win, but simply to be whole. That man in the cafe? He wasn't perfect, but I could tell he had faced his shadows and didn't flinch anymore, and somehow the room could tell too. That's the thing no one tells us as men. You don't need to say the right thing. You don't even need to say anything. What she really wants to know is, can I rest in your presence? Because in a world full of noise and performance, the man who doesn't need to prove himself is the one they remember. That morning stayed with me, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. And I began to wonder, had I ever carried that kind of silence, or had I spent my entire life filling every gap because I was terrified of what might surface in the quiet? That's when I thought of Dave. If you've ever felt like you were doing everything right but still ended up alone, I want you to stay with me, because the power that draws her is already inside you. It just needs space to breathe again. That's when I thought of Dave. We met at a divorce support group back in 2017. He wasn't the kind of man you'd notice right away, especially not in a room full of men trying to reassemble their broken egos, while others vented, argued, or over-explained. Dave mostly listened. He sat with his arms loose, back slightly hunched, almost like he didn't want to take up more space than necessary. But when he did speak, something shifted in the room. It wasn't what he said. It was how everyone leaned, in like their nervous systems trusted him before their minds caught up. At first, I thought it was just his age. He was 61. Maybe people respected that. But then I started watching more closely. Dave didn't interrupt. He didn't advise unless asked. And most remarkably, he never tried to cheer anyone up. He let pain sit in the room, unrushed, undenied. One evening, I asked him how he managed to be so calm. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "Because I've stopped trying to fix what's not mine to carry. I just stay with it." Even the ugly parts, especially the ugly parts. That line stayed with me. A few months later, I saw him again, this time not in a support group, but at a small backyard dinner in Taos. There were about 8 of us, mostly divorced or widowed, navigating the awkward dance of late-life connection, and that's when it happened. A woman named Claire, early 40s, sharp eyes, high energy, walked over and sat beside him. I watched them talk. Well, more like I watched her talk. She moved fast. Her words tumbled over each other, nervous laughter spilling between sips of red wine. She was used to men interrupting, validating, performing. Dave didn't do any of that. He just stayed. Eyes soft, posture open, no rescue attempts. He didn't mirror her energy. He anchored it. After about 10 minutes, her tone softened. Her shoulders relaxed. She started pausing more, and then she said something I'll never forget. You know, I don't usually feel this calm with people I've just met. Dave smiled gently. Didn't say, thank you. Didn't turn it into a moment. He simply nodded and looked back at her, with that kind of unshaken stillness that says, you don't need to perform here. I'm not going anywhere. And that, I realized, was his gift. He wasn't trying to be attractive. He was being present, and that is what drew her in. Carl Jung once said that we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Dave had done that work. He wasn't scared of silence because he'd made peace with the noise inside himself, and that peace, it radiated quietly but unmistakably. That night changed how I understood attraction, because what I witnessed wasn't seduction, it was safety. And if you've ever wondered why some women open up to certain men instantly while keeping you at arm's length for years, what you're about to hear might change how you show up forever. Claire's reaction to Dave wasn't random, and it wasn't about age, status, or looks. It was her nervous system. Dr. John Gottman, who spent over 4 decades studying what makes love last, said something that changed how I viewed emotional connection forever. He wrote, when a woman doesn't feel emotionally safe, no amount of logic will reach her. It sounds simple, but it's devastatingly true. You can have the right words, you can pay the bills, mow the lawn, even plan the vacations, but if the woman next to you doesn't feel attuned to, if she senses that you're not fully present with her emotions, you might as well be on mute. What draws a woman in, especially a woman who's been hurt, disappointed, or disillusioned by men, isn't performance, it's attunement. And attunement doesn't look like grand gestures, it looks like stillness. Let me explain. When a man is still, not frozen, not repressed, but grounded, his energy signals something to her body before her mind can make sense of it. Her breathing slows, her eyes soften. She unconsciously mirrors his calm. Why? Because her nervous system is constantly scanning for one thing. Am I safe here? And most men, bless their good intentions, answer that question by doing more. More talking, more fixing, more controlling, even more affection if they're trying to prove their love. But that overloads her, because what she truly wants is your quiet presence, not your effort to fill space, just you. That's why Dave was different. He didn't give her more, he gave her less, but gave it fully. He didn't meet her anxious energy with matching anxiety. He anchored it. Carl Jung would say that Dave wasn't just being a nice guy, he was embodying something rare in modern masculinity, integration. See, most of us walk around fragmented. We wear the mask of the provider, the lover, the stoic, but beneath all that is the part of us we've exiled, our shadow, the hurt boy, the rejected self, the one who once needed comfort but was told to man up. If you haven't made peace with that shadow, it leaks out in overreaction, in withdrawal, in sarcasm, in silent punishment. And even if your words are loving, your energy will still carry that unconscious noise, and women feel it, even if they can't name it. That's why Jung emphasized this. Until You make the unconscious conscious. It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Stillness, then, is not passive. It's what happens when you've faced your shadows and survived them, when you've stopped running from your loneliness, your guilt, your quiet ache, and instead invited them to sit down beside you. A man who has done that radiates something deeper than charisma. He radiates wholeness, and women, they don't want a perfect man. They want a man whose soul doesn't flinch. Let's be honest. At 50, you've lost things. Maybe people. You've learned that not every storm is meant to be stopped. Some are meant to be sat with. And when you can sit with your own storms without fear, that's when you become a refuge for someone else's. So when Claire said, "I don't usually feel this calm," what she was really saying was, something in you makes my heart unclench. Something in you lets me rest. That something was stillness, not silence from repression, but silence from mastery. And here's the good news. This kind of presence isn't reserved for monks or mystics. It's something every man can cultivate, but only if he's willing to stop chasing approval and start coming home to himself. Let me show you how. Here's what no one told me after my divorce, that women aren't waiting for more charm, they're waiting for less noise. And here's the strangest truth I've learned in the second half of my life. The more I do to gain love, the further it slips away. The more I stop performing, the closer love leans in. It's a reversal most men never make. We've been taught that effort, reward. So when a woman pulls away, we try harder. We start texting more, talking more, explaining, apologizing, planning, but all she's really asking for is this. Can you be still with me, without needing to fix me, without needing to fix yourself? This is where the mature masculine presence is born, not from dominance, not from technique, but from removal. And that brings us to something practical, simple but powerful, that any man can begin practicing today. Practice number 1, the 2-second pause. Before you respond, pause. Just 2 seconds. When she speaks, when she sighs, when she looks at you with those tired eyes, don't jump to solve. Don't reach for your usual line. Pause. Let your breath settle. Feel the urge to be useful. Then let it pass. Those 2 seconds are where presence lives. It might sound small, but it's these small, intentional acts that begin to rebuild the space where trust and calm can return. Practice number 2. Lower your voice. Open your chest. When you feel tension rising, soften your tone by half. Sit with your chest slightly open, shoulders dropped. The masculine doesn't clench. It grounds. Women aren't calmed by loud strength. They're calmed by stable softness, the kind that doesn't bend with every emotional gust. Each of these small shifts creates a ripple, not just in her, but in you. Practice number 3. Replace reaction with reception. Next time she shares something emotional, instead of reacting, defending, explaining, correcting, try saying, "Thank you for telling me that. I'm here. I hear you." That's it. No analysis. No advice unless asked. This is what Gottman calls emotional attunement in action, not performance, presence. And over time, this kind of presence becomes second nature, especially in moments when you feel unsure. Practice 4. Be still, even when you're unsure. There will be moments when you don't know what to say. Let that moment happen. Most men panic in those gaps. They rush to fill them with words, jokes, distractions. Don't let the silence stretch. Hold it like an embrace. Let her see that you're not afraid of not knowing. That is power. That is what makes you unforgettable. It's not about perfect responses. It's about becoming the kind of man who no longer runs from discomfort, his or hers. This isn't about becoming stoic or cold. It's about becoming calm and deeply available. A man who can feel his own pain without running from it is the kind of man others feel safe running to. And here's the irony. You don't need to build attraction. You just need to remove everything that's been blocking it, your aura, the one she senses before you speak. It's already there. It's just buried under years of noise, proving and pretending. Let it surface, and when that happens, when you begin to embody instead of perform, something even deeper becomes possible. Because when you stop chasing the image of the man you think you need to be, you return to the man you were always meant to be. And when you return to that, you don't just draw love in, you keep it. There's a line from Carl Jung that echoes louder the older I get. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And the tragedy for most men? They never get there. Not because they weren't strong, not because they didn't try, but because they were too busy being who they were told to be, to ever become who they actually are. You see, somewhere along the way, we traded soul for structure. We became husbands, providers, fathers, achievers. We wore suits of competence and shields of usefulness. But underneath, most of us were scared. Boys just trying not to be left behind. So we built personas. We pushed through grief. We smiled through numbness. We learned how to fix everyone else's pain, except our own. And then one day, she left. Or maybe she stayed, but her eyes no longer reached you, and suddenly all that noise you'd spent decades layering was deafening in the silence. That's the moment many men break. But if you're lucky, that's also the moment you wake up. You stop trying to be impressive, and you start trying to be real. You stop chasing better, and you start choosing wholeness. Jung called this integration. It's when your shadow, your shame, your rage, your longing, your doubt is no longer your enemy, but your teacher. It's when you stop blaming women for not understanding you and start asking why you've never truly understood yourself. It's when stillness is no longer something you fake, but something you are. That's presence. It's not sexy in the way commercials show it. It doesn't roar. It hums. It doesn't need attention. It receives it, quietly, respectfully, deeply. And when you carry that energy into a room, she doesn't see status. She sees safety. She doesn't see a perfect man. She sees a grounded one. And in a world full of men trying to be more, the man who can simply be becomes unforgettable. Let that sink in. You are not here to outperform your past. You are here to return to yourself in a way you've never dared to before. Not for them, not to win anyone back, but because your own soul deserves to finally be lived. Because in the end, we don't crave applause. We crave resonance. We don't want to impress rooms full of strangers. We want to sit beside one person and know we don't have to say a word for them to feel us. That is presence, and it's available to you right now, not in 5 years, not after another self-help book, but the moment you stop hiding from your own quiet. So here's my question to you. When was the last time your presence said more than your words ever could? Because maybe the world doesn't need another man who knows what to say. Maybe it needs more men who are brave enough to say nothing and simply be. If any part of this spoke to you, not just in your mind, but somewhere deeper, I want you to know this. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're just becoming. And becoming isn't loud. It's quiet. It's messy. It's slow. But it's sacred. You don't need to go back to the man you used to be. You don't even need to fix the one you are. What you need is to stand still long enough for your soul to catch up to you. And when it does, you'll begin to carry that same presence we've been talking about, not to impress, but to embrace. To every man watching this, have you ever felt like you were doing everything right, yet something still felt missing? Have you ever had a woman look at you and feel like she wasn't looking into you? If you've been there, comment below with just 5 words. I'm learning to be still, not for likes, not for attention, but to signal to yourself and to other men in this space that we're in this together. No masks, no bravado, just real men, finally learning how to be.